Welcome to another episode of the Creative Exchange. Woo! I have my friend Wallace here from Maingear. I'm super excited to chat with you. I have so many computer questions, and I just, for some context, I'm sure you're a little bit aware, but also for our audience here, I have been an Apple user since the dawn of time. My first computer ever was just a Dell that I played solitaire on as a kid in middle school. But one of my first ever serious machines was, a 2012 MacBook Pro. It was spec'd out during the time. And honestly, I didn't upgrade that until my recent purchase, 2017 MacBook Pro, with the KB Lake processor, but at the same time they're behind a generation, so now I'm on this journey of I want to maximize all of my machines, whether I'm here in the studio and I'm editing on a desktop machine, or also I had this kind of awakening when I was trying a Dell XPS 15 that was churning through footage that usually would be pretty sluggish on my MacBook. So selfishly, this is a very exciting conversation for me to have because I have questions that I just want to ask you, but I also want to learn about your story. What is Maingear? How did it come to be? So kick it off, Wallace.
All right. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here. And I'm excited to work with you, right? So we've been a fan for a while, and we've been watching your channel, and we see you grow, and it's amazing. Now let's talk about the options, right? So people think there's only two options. There's the OEM tier 1 guys, and guys like HP, Dell, right? And then there's Apple, right? But then there's this whole different category of PC manufacturers.
It has been exploding over the past 5 years.
Because of gaming.
Yeah.
Right. So that exists, and that's who we are, right? So we're with Maingear Computers, and I founded the company about 10 years or more than 10 years ago now. Wow. Just because it's what I love. I couldn't find a job. I love the space. I love PCs. I love modding, and I always had a passion for brands and just premium experiences. And that's how we kind of short story. That's how we came about.
Was that straight out of college? Did you go to college?
No, I went to a technical school.
Okay.
So I went to a school called Satone Institute. It was for networking systems professional. And I left school, and I was too young, right? So I was 18 years old, couldn't find a job. I wasn't going to be a network engineer anywhere because it's too big of a responsibility. So it just came out of love, like I said. I started the company. I just started building PCs for friends and family, was playing Counter-Strike 1.6 like a maniac every day. I would sleep and wake up thinking about the crosshair in the game and how it can be better and faster. Yeah. And that's where the need for tweaking the PC came about, where you overclock the CPU and the GPU, and also liquid cooling. We were one of the first companies to offer liquid cooling because it wasn't something you can purchase. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where liquid and PCs don't combine, right? Don't work together.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. So keep it away.
Does that not ruin the computer on the inside?
I mean, yeah, if you've spilled the liquid, right. But at the time, we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff. I was ordering Home Depot fittings with copper pipes and trying different types of liquids, how to bring down the temperatures. At one point, we were using something called the red line water wetter or something like that, like radiator fluids from cars, and it was pretty wild. But it just, like I said, it came out of love, right? So I would be doing this in my basement if I wasn't doing it as a job. Mm-hmm. And today we're considered the Ferrari of PCs.
So I totally see that. Well, and where does the influence come from because I feel like you mentioned cars a lot. Is that something you're passionate about? And obviously I think we see that in Maingear PCs.
Yeah, I had to make a choice. I was going to either be a mechanic or very small chances of being a race car driver.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with being a mechanic because I really loved that. At the time I used to change my motors around I had Hondas at the time. So in a Honda you can get an engine from a GSR and put it inside a Honda Civic and turbos and all these things, and or work with PCs. And that was my number one choice, right? That's what I really loved doing, was really just playing games. And I said, what if I combine both my passions, right? Where I can get some of the inspiration from the automotive motorsports world and bring it to the PC space. And that's where we came about with automotive grade finishes. We were one of the first to have automotive grade finishes where the PC gets painted just like a car. If you look at inside of our computers, you see the fittings and it looks like the engine of a hot rod. It's for a reason. It's because that's where we seek inspiration from. If you look at like even the customization, right? So I haven't ordered a Ferrari because I can't afford a Ferrari, but
one day, Maingear.com,
but
guys.
But if you go to the Ferrari.com and you go to their configurator, you can spec the stitching of the car on your seat. So if you want like red stitching with like a yellow seatbelt with like black rims and like a red exterior or yellow exterior, you can get it however you want. Same thing with our PCs. You can get the color of the liquid spec to your liking. Never mind the hardware, right? So whatever hardware you want, we can get it. But then it comes down to the customization. Like that's where you can really make it yours. And you'll see it when you get the delivery of your PC.
Oh, I'm so excited. Yeah. And when did this whole entire gaming thing, when did it become, I need this beast of a machine to handle all these games? Because a game like PUBG or Fortnite, it's so mainstream, so you think, oh, I need to make it to where the masses can play it, obviously. But what are the benefits of having PC, like custom PCs that are above the price tag of the usual, maybe like 2,000 and below? Is that, I guess, like live streaming? That's when, I can play this game and also live stream to Twitch without it hiccuping. Is that was live streaming the thing that kind of pushed it over the edge where people are like, oh, I need a really powerful machine?
Well, that scene just really took off in the last like 3 or 4 years, but you always needed a really powerful PC if you wanted the ultimate experience. There's a saying where people say, "Will it run Crysis?" Right? Crysis is pretty old, and at the time you needed a crazy PC to run with multiple GPUs to run everything and with all the settings high. Right? Now today's generation of gamers they're really content producers as well, right? Because you guys, because I'm saying you guys, because you're literally playing the game. You're recording the game while you're playing it, and then you might even edit that footage, right, and export it and broadcast it to the world. So within the last 3 years, that's where you really need a multi-core processor. A typical quad core, which typically works fine just to play a game with like a beefy GPU, was fine 2-3 years ago. But now if you want your friends and family to watch the footage and you want to share it with the world, you probably need a 6-core plus, right? So 6-core minimum, 8, some people are getting 16 cores, 20 cores, or 18 cores, or whatever.
20 cores. Okay, that leads me to my next question. Is there such thing as too many cores? When it comes to, maybe it's a difference between gaming and editing, does it come to a point where just these games, these editing softwares just aren't optimized for 18 cores?
It depends on the person. If you're not video editing, then you don't need a 18-core Intel Extreme Edition processor. Okay, but if you are video editing and you are gaming and you are doing multiple things with your PC, Photoshop, everything else, then there's no such thing as too many cores, because that's software that will scale across every core in your PC. So the more cores you throw at it, think of it like hands helping you carry something, right? The more hands, the better it is. Same idea. If you're just playing PUBG and streaming it on Twitch and that's all you do, then 6 core is totally fine. You could even get away with the quad core possibly, but you're not going to be able to put everything in, the highest settings.
Right. And it's interesting that it is cool that we're in a time where everyone's content creators, but there's this thing with streaming games that's very just community driven, to where it's not about followers, but it's about you hanging out with your other 4 friends. That's right. And, talking in a Discord channel about gaming. And it's cool to see also the rise of esports and how growing up, I'm sure everyone's parents was like, get off video games, it's not productive. But now colleges are literally offering scholarships now for esports, which blows my mind, because I've been more of a spectator of all of this. The only gaming that I've done in my past was Halo on the Xbox. I haven't done a lot of PC gaming. But I could play Halo. But it's interesting to just see it from the outside and all these cool opportunities for people, who just game and they love it. And now it can be your job. Now you can get a scholarship. It can power education. So what are your views on esports, and like what's the excitement like around that right now?
So first of all, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Esports is huge. It's the biggest thing that nobody's heard of, right? Like unless
okay, yes. For someone who has no idea what we're talking about, like explain esports to explain it to my mom, basically.
It's esports is no different than watching a baseball game, right? Except somebody else is playing the baseball game, somebody else is playing video games in that case, and it just happens to sell out stadiums just like a baseball game, or well, baseball is kind of not that strong lately, but it sells out stadiums. Like the Staples Arena sells out in 30 minutes to watch an esports match. That's unbelievable.
Crazy.
Right? It is crazy. And then, as for esports as a whole, like I think today's generation of parents, I'm 34 years old, and Ron's here with us. Say hi to
what's up, Ron?
To behind the cameras here. Ron's a father, and I think a guy like Ron or a guy like me, whenever I become a father, I'm not going to tell my kids don't play video games, right? Because I grew up playing video games.
Yeah.
And if I see that they're talented and they want to pursue that as a career, I'm going to enforce them. I'm going to say, yeah, man, like if that's what you love, do it, because you can become very successful at it. I mean, look at guys like Ninja.
Oh my gosh.
Right?
Insane. And I was one of those people that did not know of him until he played with Drake. So, I mean, Ninja he's the biggest when it comes to streaming. The most popular game that he's streaming right now is Fortnite, and he streams like 6-hour periods, like twice a day or something. It's insane. I mean, this dude can stream video games for literally 10 hours a day, just engaging with people, and he's very skilled. I think that's something that people don't recognize with streaming games, is it helps if you're really good, right? People want to watch someone who's like going and crushing it. So I think that has to do a lot with his successes. He's good too, but he's entertaining.
Well, he's skilled, but he also created a really great brand around himself. Right. So it's not just watching, because you know what, the cool part about watching esports match is just, it's not only watching the guy that's the greatest, but it's also, like you said, the community, right? Mm-hmm. Like being able to interact with that community. And if that person has the right messaging and they have the right branding behind, themselves, it can become something huge. And I think he did that very well across every aspect, right? So like the community that follows him, he's the biggest, right, in the world. Mm-hmm. And then being able to engage with guys like Drake, he didn't hook up with Drake because he got lucky. He hooked up with Drake because he was one of the best.
He was the dude.
Yeah, he was
Drake
the dude.
The rapper, guys.
Yeah.
That is mainstream hitting this crazy social media world so hard. And I think that was a big wake-up call for people in regards to, one, like Twitch, and really looking at Twitch like this huge contender. And it's interesting that they have really stuck to their guns this entire time and now just killing it. I mean, I think Twitch is a 10-year-old platform or something.
I think it started with Justin.tv, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have a really interesting story. Tim Ferriss has a podcast with him. I'll link it in the show notes below.
I love Tim Ferriss, by the way.
Me too. His podcast is the best. And so seeing Twitch come on the spot in a time where I think YouTubers are a little frustrated with the platform, it's been fun to watch how people are using Twitch. So there's Ninja. Or are there any other people that you enjoy watching on Twitch or YouTube, or just watching recaps on Instagram or YouTube?
I mean, I just I actually watch some of our fans, believe it or not. I don't necessarily always watch the biggest guys, and we're also playing ourselves, right?
Totally.
Yeah, so we're providing some of the content too, and I don't have anybody necessarily that I'm very focused on, but I enjoy actually watching Deadmau5, believe it or not.
Yes.
He's a friend, and he's also invested into Maingear, right?
Amazing.
But it's really amazing how it can. I get home today and I don't watch TV anymore. Mm-hmm. I'll literally pop open Twitch on my big screen TV, right? Or YouTube, right? Primarily YouTube actually when I get home, but I'm not consuming television anymore, and that's the cool part about it. Mm-hmm. But as for the YouTube comment, you're right. I mean, Twitch, they stuck to their guns and they're amazing at it, and I think they have a huge opportunity to grow even further now. Now that YouTube is kind of dropping the ball with all the what's the word I'm looking for?
Demonetization.
There you go.
And adpocalypse.
Yeah.
I think people are trying to navigate their way in that. But I think it also takes self-awareness too, of like, okay, do you have the right type of thing that's going to win on Twitch. For me, I am not super into PC gaming, and that's not saying that I'm not going to be in the future. But right now, it's my thing would be live streaming, like editing a video or something, but I don't think that's entertaining. So if someone comes on the spot and makes creative streaming really fun and really exciting, I'm stoked. I will, observe that and see if I can do it. But yeah, it's cool to see all these different social medias popping up and seeing what people are doing with them. So as a consumer of content, but also a creator, what was your biggest pain point in creating a company? I feel like is just trying to solve a problem, right? So what did you see like a hole in the market? Or of course, one, there's like aesthetics, two, there's customization. Were those kind of the leading forces with creating Maingear?
I mean, I can sit here and say I had this master plan, but I would be lying, right? I really didn't have a plan. I knew how to build PCs really well, and I loved the car space, the automotive space really a lot actually. And my plan was just to make the world's most beautiful PCs that perform the best. That was the plan in my head, but I didn't know anything about business. I was 18 years old at the time. Didn't know how the world really works. There's so much that's involved, right? Taxes, accountants, lawyers, and everything else. Filing for trademarks of your brand, and then you have overhead. How do you manage that overhead? And there's so much that goes into running a business. And luckily, I just happened to be at a time in my life where I was still living in mom's basement, right? So like I can afford to make the mistakes, and I can afford to learn from them. And I think that's important. If you're 18 years old and you're thinking about doing something now, do it. Because
you probably have as much time that you'll ever have. You don't think that, but you don't have kids. You don't have to worry about rent if you have like a parent's home to live in. I mean, that's what I did. I lived in my parents' home for 3 years while I was going to college and figuring out what I wanted to do with my life.
The timing is everything. It's huge because how if you have kids, how are you going to risk feeding your family to start a business that's your dream, right? And so unless you have a really good calculated plan, then go ahead and do it, right? But so yeah, I mean, it was just really out of, like I said, out of love and learning and stumbling, and we would just, once we would fall, we would get back up and then just try something new.
After all of the experimentation with the actual building these things side, and once the business side of it was forming, did you find like a partner who took all of the like logistics out of your way, or what was that process like? Because I think a lot of people out there, maybe they're the more creative side of a business, and what really paralyzes them is, how do I take this to the next step? I don't want to go into meetings and have to pitch the value of my company. I just want to build these things. I just want to create.
Look, I just, there's no one-dimensional way to start a business. Like if you can't just say, hey, I'm the creative guy and that's all I'm going to do, right? For example, today I had to start a podcast. I had to start live streaming. I had to adapt to today's standards of running a business and put a human being behind the company, because if I chose not to do it, then I would fail, right? So I think that if you want to become an entrepreneur and you want to start a business, you just need to say, I'm going to do whatever it takes. If you say, hey, I'm only the content creator guy, unless you have 5 partners that are each going to do different things, then it's really tough to do it on your own. For me, I happened to get lucky at the time. At the time, my boss, he invested a little bit of money into my company, and that's how we had some money to start. But it was really all scrappy. We just had to sell computers to stay alive, right? And that makes you creative. Actually, that makes you think how you approach things, right? When you have to pay rent. And
that's some creative problems.
Right. No, but you know what? It's like the greatest things though. When you have to pay rent and you're 5 days from paying rent and you have this small startup business and rent is due, what do? You need to figure out a way to do guerrilla marketing because you don't have money to spend to sell more computers. So in my case, I had to go and create flyers and knock on people's doors, or there's all sorts of crazy stuff that I did. And we've pivoted multiple times without losing the focus on the actual building computers, building high performance computer part, right? Like at one point we had a cyber cafe
What is a cyber cafe?
A cyber cafe is you don't know.
Oh gosh, I know. Am I aging myself?
So a cyber cafe was an esports arena, right? And except that I wasn't selling enough computers to pay the bills. I said, you know what? I'm gonna rent these computers by the hour so I can keep the lights on. So I can sell more computers in the future. So there's all sorts of creativity that will come into your entrepreneurial life if you ever decide to start
a co-working space with really fast computers.
Yeah, you can say that today. Yeah, that sounds better.
I feel like everything is turning into a co-working space.
Everything is, yes.
It's insane. Well, heck yeah. I mean, you have to be, even if you're not the creative type too, there are so many ways when building a business where you just have to problem solve. You just have to get around those hurdles any way possible. When it comes to customizing a PC with, like, okay, your main thing is gaming and streaming versus just chugging out 4K videos. Maybe you're just editing 1080, but at the same time, I need to be exporting videos at the same time. I need to be editing thumbnails in Photoshop at the same time. What are the biggest differences in specific hardware parts that people should look for in gaming, but also editing? Because it does vary a little bit, right?
Yeah, I mean, editing is gonna basically, it's everything you can throw at it, right? So the most amount of cores you can afford to purchase. If you have 32 or 64 gigs of RAM, really fast RAM, I'm going to throw it on there too. And even on the GPU side, I wouldn't say a Titan or anything, but at least a 1070 for anything that's CUDA accelerated, or an NVIDIA GTX 1070. Mm-hmm. And on the gaming side, it comes down to a lot of people misconfigure their systems, and there's a way to balance your gaming system out. Okay, so if you get a really high-end GPU, like a GTX 1080 Ti, and you pair it to a really slow Core i3, that GPU is not going to scale, okay? Or if you get like a really high-end GPU and pair it to a Core i5, but then you only have 8 gigs of RAM. So you really want to hit all the basically price brackets of certain things. Like if you're building a mid-range system, build it all across mid-range. So get 8 gigs of RAM, get a Core i5, get a GTX 1070. Mm-hmm. If you want to build the best flagship PC money can buy, then get all the high-end components, right? Yeah. On the PC gaming and streaming side, I would say 6-core processor, because you want the 4 cores dedicated to gaming, and then you want the extra 2 cores to handle the Twitch activity and stuff like that. And if you're streaming to multiple platforms at the same time, you need even more, right? Mm-hmm. So like right now, the streaming rig that
do people do that where they stream to Twitch and YouTube at the same time?
So I'll take us for example. Our stream, we're streaming to Facebook, to YouTube, Twitch, and Mixer, all at the same time from one PC.
Wow!
And we had a 12-core running that streaming box. Yeah. It wasn't enough. We had to upgrade to an 18-core because it was starting to cripple down on the CPUs.
I believe it. Yeah.
So it really depends, right? And then also you want to look at certain components. So for example, you don't need a GTX 1080 Ti to power your 1080p monitor. Okay, if you have a 1080p monitor, get a GTX 1060. It's totally fine. If you have a 4K monitor that's 120 hertz, or I think those just came out, then you want GTX 1080, or you even want SLI, so dual GTX 1080s, right? So you really want to look at balancing everything out whenever you design your dream configuration, and it's also based on your budget, right? So,
totally, 100%. What do you think? Can you give some rough numbers around what that like mid-tier, high tier, because I know a lot of like my audience is very like they're ready to buy things. I think I love to share the process of like, I'm switching to this, or I'm upgrading to this, and there's different people and different price points. So for that mid-tier build, if they're looking for more of that customization instead of going to a Dell or HP, what would that like mid-tier look like, and then what would that high tier look like in terms of prices?
So roughly? Look, our like an average like mid to high end PC is around $2,000. Okay, the full setup will cost around $2,000 with the monitor, keyboard, mouse, everything. Mm-hmm. If you want a high end PC, they go up to $10,000-$15,000, depending on what you configure, and then there's a point of diminishing returns on the high end, right? Some people will spend, thousands of dollars on just aesthetics alone. So, and we have products for that. So for example, our Vibe on our website is the PC that's designed around being the most cost effective for your money. Okay. So you can get a Vibe, $1,500. It starts at $899 or $799. And you can configure it where it's going to give you good value for the money, because we're not focusing the budget of your build on things like the chassis and you're buying an ultra expensive aluminum chassis and things like that.
Right.
And then there's systems like the one you saw in Sam Sheffer's office or his studio.
It's amazing.
Where those
that was the first video that I found you guys, and I was like, oh my gosh. It's fun, I guess, building your own PC, but at the same time, when you do that, what I've seen is aesthetics aren't like the number one priority, which is fine. You have to do you. But when I first saw Sam's Maingear PC that you built, I was just like, I was floored.
It becomes an art piece.
Yeah. I'm like, that is something that I want to put in the center of my freaking office. It's like a head turner. So that is awesome that there's that option. Yeah.
So think about it. Your PC is the center of your life, right? Like it does everything. You can bank with it. You can make money with it. You can stream. In your case, you're a content creator. You rely on your PC, right? So and most people, if you want to have your PC sitting in your home, you want it to look beautiful too, and you want it to feel like it's yours, because it is yours. It's running your life in a way. So that's where we come in. I mean, we want to make sure that, especially on the high end side, there's a lot of companies, and I'm not belittling any company specifically, but that will just throw a bunch of high-end hardware into a box and call it a super high-end gaming PC, and people are spending thousands of dollars on that, but there's no engineering behind that, right? In our case, the F131 that you saw in Sam's office, it took us over a year to engineer that whole product.
Wow. We
designed a cooling system called the Apex in there, where it distributes the liquid cooling evenly, and it creates a much more efficiently cooled system. And we engineered that from grounds up, together with the chassis, and then we got all the high-end hardware, and then we can sell it to you as a package, right? But you're buying innovation, you're buying engineering, you're not just buying expensive hardware.
Right.
That's important.
Right.
Because it's easy to throw flashy lights and Intel Extreme Edition processor and NVIDIA GTX and ATI and call it the ultimate gaming PC, when it's really not. Yeah.
Let's do a little bit of, not like speculation, but just why, in terms of, how is it that companies like, Dell, HP, obviously you guys who are customizing computers, obviously you guys can get the highest end parts ASAP. But even the Dell and HPs of the world are putting, the latest gen Intel Core processors into their machines. And that's what I noticed recently was, it makes sense that this Dell XPS laptop with an 8th generation Core i7 processor is faster than like a 7th gen in a MacBook. Why are they traditionally so behind? I think that's, what a lot of people talk about, but is it just because, Hey guys, quick interruption here from editing Sara. I filmed this podcast about 2 weeks ago, and by the time I uploaded it, guess what? Apple released brand new MacBook Pros. If you guys are on YouTube, I feel like every person is making a video on it right now, and I will have mine up soon included. But just want to mention, hey, the new MacBook Pros have the latest 8th gen Intel Core i7 processor and i9 processor, but they were still pretty slow to the punch. So, back to the podcast.
It's weird because we
right?
talk about it. We talk about it internally as well, and I don't know much about Apple's business or how the internals of their business.
Oh, did we just trigger Siri?
Did she just get? We didn't say hey Siri.
We didn't see. Siri, be quiet. That was so strange.
Right? We just said Apple, and then Siri kicks in.
Oh my gosh, they're listening, guys.
There you go.
We need to be careful what we say in here.
I thought that was my phone for a second. I'm like,
no, that was my Apple HomePod.
That was weird.
That's creepy.
Wow. Okay.
You know what? We're gonna even continue this conversation if we don't make it out alive, guys. You know what happened to us, but yeah.
That was freaky.
So 7th gen Intel, why are those still in the most recent laptops? MacBook Pros.
I think let's talk about the Mac Pro.
That's
I'm gonna call it
extremely outdated. The trash can.
The trash can. I was trying not to say that, but yes, the trash can.
Yeah.
Apple is a hardware company. as well, right? They can spin up hardware, and we talk about internally, they can make a motherboard that accommodates the latest generation processor. And technically processors, they go down in TDP, right? So that the thermals of the processor, whenever the manufacturing process matures or whenever there's a newer manufacturing process, it tends to run cooler. So it's not a thermal problem. It's not a hardware problem because Apple can spin a motherboard to accommodate the latest gen. What can it be, right? And I think, this is just my personal thought, I think it's a software issue with their operating system, possibly. Maybe it's adapting the operating system to the latest generation from Intel might be a bigger job than we think it is, right? So I'm not really sure, but that's kind of what I would guess. As for the laptops, I think it's the same situation, but except it's a much higher volume product for them, so they're able to focus on that and have the latest at the time whenever they launch, whenever they do a refresh.
Right. Because people are locked in with, I think, just the experience and the fact that, are you an Android user with your phone?
Yeah. And so I just switched from Apple to my Pixel.
Okay. How are you liking the Pixel?
I'm loving my Pixel.
Okay.
And what made me switch was the whole AI thing at the time. When Google launched it,
they're
talking about AI, and I thought it was a smarter phone.
Right.
I thought it was a smarter smartphone. And I hadn't used Android for a couple of years because every time I tried, it really sucked.
Yeah.
Right.
I haven't had the best. I've only used an iPhone and several iterations of the Galaxy. So I haven't had experiences outside of Samsung's phone for Android, but whenever I try to go back, it just seems like a bulkier experience.
So see, for me, I couldn't live without the good battery life, the okay battery life. Okay. I couldn't live without a good camera, right? And those are the two main points for me. And then every time I would open up an app in Android, so like it would always be choppy and there's always something that's not working right. But I feel like ever since Google focused on the Pixel line, they're able to provide a much cleaner version of Android, and where it was good enough for me where I can make the switch. And quite frankly, I love it. It's really good. Yeah. And plus, the iPhone 10, I couldn't live without the fingerprint reader. I didn't want to rely on the
I am
face
getting
thing.
used to it. So I do love the swiping going in between applications, but I think the same reason why people are hooked on iPhones is the same reason why it's so difficult to leave the Apple ecosystem anywhere, whether it's a laptop, the desktop, is just the fact that AirDrop, iMessage, everything is seamless throughout every single machine. I think that's something that it's hard to depart from, but I think the people who are considering considering changes is these creative professionals, because it has gotten to a point where it's just speed, and that's kind of what it's coming down to. So people who are just internet browsing, emailing, maybe editing some pictures, I don't see like this. Yes, you are going to pay a little bit more on the Apple side for like a slower performance, but if that's all you're doing and you love that ecosystem, then like more power to you. But I think there is this gap right now where people like me are creative professionals and our life depends on it, and now it's down to speed. Well,
before, like if you made the switch, you get the faster speeds, but then you had a really poor experience. Now I think the experience caught up to the speed.
Right.
And now either be it, a phone or a PC, the alternative is great.
Yeah. And right? I think, and that's what's so great about competition, right? And I think companies like you guys and Maingear, hopefully it's going to challenge also all of these classic providers of these computers to step it up as well, and have that level of customization. And so hopefully,
here's the thing, like their supply chains are not designed for it. So like what you probably don't know is that last year we partnered with HP.
Cool.
HP wanted to reinvigorate the Omen line last year, and they came to us to help engineer the inside of the Omen X, right? And they flat out said, look, we're partnering with you because we can't sell these crazy high-end liquid cooled systems because we're not building them like you are, right? Our supply chain just can't handle it.
Right.
So, we've built our business around that model. So for us, it's easy to engineer and to sell these systems, right? So I don't think you'll ever see the level of customization that you get from a company like Maingear. in a Dell or in an HP, which is fine. I mean,
well, that's what makes you unique, right? And exactly,
good for
that's
us,
why
right?
exactly, yes. Gearing a little bit off of PCs, what is a tech advancement that maybe goes inside a PC or outside of a PC that gets you really excited? I saw you tweeting about a 8 terabyte Samsung SSD, which SSD prices are still so insane. So I can only imagine the price tag that's associated with that.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
But yeah, stuff like that. I mean, what gets you excited right now for the next couple years?
Well, I'm looking forward to the next generation GPUs. Next generation NVIDIA GPUs should be exciting. Companies like Intel with their Optane technology, storage does not sound sexy, but when you think about storage in the future, it might change the game with Optane specifically. There's a lot, right? Form factors are going to change because all of a sudden...
Side note, Optane memory is basically making a traditional hard drive act more like an SSD because SSD prices are so expensive right now. Intel has created this Optane memory that allows you to interact with like a normal, HD hard drive in a similar fashion as an SSD, right?
See, I don't even find that part interesting about accelerating a hard drive. I find the technology behind Optane interesting and how it can be applied in other areas of the ecosystem.
Interesting.
And they announced Optane on DIMMs. I think it was on server DIMMs, and all of a sudden you can eliminate memory altogether in the future. And now you have that space on the motherboard where what if Optane was built into the processor? What if your processor was shipping with memory in the future, right? And then all of a sudden you have that extra space on the motherboard to do other things or shrink the PC.
Or shrink it, yeah.
Yeah. So like. That's how I see it, and then I think there's going to be a lot of cool innovations in the near future, and thanks to companies like Intel, NVIDIA, AMD, these are great companies that are helping us, enabling us to build these amazing PCs.
Yeah, that's cool. Exciting stuff. So I saw you guys build a really fun PC with a Nintendo Switch dock.
Oh yeah.
And the paint job alone was sick, but I know there was a lot of special stuff going on the inside. So one, why did you feel compelled to do that? But two, what are some general maybe game consoles, maybe the Switch, or specific games that have you excited right now?
So, I'm the.
I thought that was so cool.
Yeah. So, if you think of the consoles, there's usually there's this unknown war that goes on between the console peasants. And I'm just kidding.
Fight.
And the elite PC master race crew.
Hashtag PC masters.
If there's a console that most PC users would buy, it would be the Switch. I think just because the content is not available on the PC, that's on the Switch. So like all the Mario games and everything else that comes with it. And then also the form factor, right? So like when we were designing the PC you're talking about was a Nintendo Switch enabled F131. It was for the Intel Extreme Rig Challenge PC, our contestant. And we're like, what can we do to be innovative, but also while using our product, a product that we sell today? How can we innovate based on that and basically enter to win, right? So that's where the idea came was to stick with the F131 form factor. We stuck with our Apex cooling system. We innovated on the cooling system by creating the world's first RGB liquid cooled system. So we integrated LED lights inside the actual liquid cooling tubes. Cool. And I think Linus was still trying to figure out how we made that happen. But we innovated just for that contest, right? Wow. And then the cherry on the top was the Nintendo Switch. We're like, hey, what if we put a Switch dock built into the PC, right? Because most PC gamers probably have a Switch. You get home and you just dock your Switch, and the form factor just happened to fit in the F131. So cool. We created the mounts for it all in house, and then we actually won Intel's Most Creative Award, which was pretty cool.
There you go.
Yeah.
Heck yes. No, that was super cool to see. But yeah, to wrap things up, do you have a piece of advice to people, whether it's like one, building a business, or two, anything that, in the PC world that maybe is a misconception that people should know?
For the first part of the question was the only thing stopping you from moving forward is you, right? So like if you want to build a business and you can afford to financially make that decision right away and make that jump, do it. If you're 18 years old and you want to start a business, do it, because most 35 plus years old people cannot, afford to just drop what their 9 to 5, right? And risk providing for their family. But so go for it, right? If you think you suck at something, there's a lot more people that suck even more. And most things in life you can practice and get better on, right?
There's so much knowledge out there on the internet about everything.
Plus today we live in a world where you can just go on YouTube and figure out how to do something, right? So if you want to start a PC building company, do it. You're probably not going to be better than Maingear right away. And that's the truth, right? Because we have so much behind it, but you can build up to that one day. And I think that's, either if you're building a computer company or if you're becoming a vlogger or YouTuber or content creator, you're going to get better and better over time by doing it more and more, right? And then what was the second part of it?
Are there any misconceptions about PCs or just anything that's like, this is my platform that I'm going to say this? You got thousands of people listening.
I mean, it's not as hard as you think, at least for PC gaming. If you want to get into PC gaming today, it's fairly easy to set up a PC. It's not as intimidating as most would think. We get a lot of people that are switching over from an Xbox or a PlayStation and coming over to PC, and they're intimidated by settings and by things like that. I think that today it's pretty easy. You have tools like GeForce Experience, which will go and enable you to tweak your settings automatically for you, things like that. As for, I don't know, misconceptions specifically,
I guess it does. I didn't think about it that way, but you probably have more people who are coming from the console side. That
we do.
Because in my brain, I've just been living this like Apple versus PC world, that I'm constantly thinking, oh, this is something of like, oh, people who are using MacBooks and Apple to come over. But there's this whole other world that sees it as, oh, I could either spend my time playing an Xbox or I could spend my time PC gaming, because there is a lot of overlap with games, right?
So the PC is not what you see in Best Buy. Put it that way.
There you go.
Yeah, there's way more out there.
Yeah.
Companies like ours, like go to maingear.com and you can see what we offer. There's the level of performance, the level of customization, the experience overall is much better. And so if you think of your old Toshiba laptop as that's the PC versus your MacBook, forget about that.
Yeah.
Today everything is different. On the OS side, on Windows side, Windows is amazing now. Right. And
it's not as scary as I thought it was going to be. So the last time I tried Windows was Vista, and I was just like, oh my God, Vista.
Of course of course, like you hate PC.
Yeah. And so when I went back to it recently, I'm like, oh, okay, this isn't as bad as I remember it.
Yeah, no, it's actually not bad at all. The experience is pretty great. And once you get used to it, you'd be surprised. It's like switching to an Android phone. You'd be surprised how good it is.
Well, I don't know I'm much more open to switching to my PC than my mobile
We'll start
device.
with the PC first.
Well, yeah.
And then we might get you a Pixel 3 or something in the future.
Something I'm always curious about with phones is, and this is what I always love to review on my channel, is just the cameras and, how's the video, how are the photos from it. And so that's something that I'm always looking for, but it's going to take some... it would take some special sauce to get me over to Android.
All it's gonna take is iMessage. Once we have an iMessage competitor, it's gonna be over.
Yeah, we'll see.
I'm telling you.
We'll see. Yeah. Well, Wallace, thanks so much for joining us on the Creative Exchange. So where can people find you and Maingear? Maingear streams a lot, right?
We do. So we do a once a week stream. So just whatever platform of choice. If you're on Twitter, if you're on Twitch, if you're on Facebook, now we're on Instagram TV.
Yeah, cool.
Just look for Maingear.
All of the things.
And for me, just look for Wallace Santos, whatever platform on Twitter or on Instagram. Just the Wallace_Wallace.Santos, and you'll find me.
Awesome. I will put all those links in the show notes below. I'm super stoked to work with you guys in the future. So guys, keep tuned on the YouTube channel, and new episode of the Creative Exchange every single Monday. You can peep it on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, anywhere where you listen to podcasts. And until next time, guys, stay peachy. Wallace, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Peace.